But first, a few words about how I became a historian. My experience is in no way to be considered a model. And in fact, it might be considered an anti-model. And it will only show that there are many different ways to become a historian. I grew up, like Lynn, in Minnesota, but not St. Paul. I grew up in small towns. In fact, from the 3rd grade to the 8th grade, the town I lived in had 250 people. And 90% of the kids in school were farm kids. My father spent most of his career as a high school administrator and math teacher. But during the most formative years, in my college years or high school years and college years, he was an insurance agent. Now, I was never any good in math, and I quickly decided that I didn't want to have anything to do with selling insurance. I wasn't particularly good at any other academic subject in high school, including history. The required world history and required American history courses I took in high school were taught respectively by the basketball coach and the baseball coach. A fairly typical pattern then, and not unknown today. And I'm pretty sure I did better in those sports than I did in their classes. In any case, when I entered college, I didn't know what I would major in, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Two experiences, and here I suppose there's similarity with Eric's experience. Two experiences during my freshman year began to remedy that aimlessness. First, to meet the science requirement, I chose to take a geology course because it was rumored to be the easiest science course at the college I attended. I didn't do particularly well the first semester in learning about the properties of rocks, the nature of the Earth's crust, and so on. But the second semester was historical geology, which actually turned me on. To learn how the retreating glaciers in the last ice age formed the lakes and moraines and gravel pits that surrounded me in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, etc. To learn how the seas that once covered most of North America deposited the layers that formed the limestone quarry near where I lived. How the glaciers that had carved the valley I lived in had once caused the river to run the opposite direction. All of that I found fascinating. And at the same time, the History of Western Civilization course, that's what it was called then, that I took during my freshman year, showed me that the past of the human race could be at least as interesting as the past of the glaciers and the rivers and the globe. As I recall now, the principal reading, or one of the principal readings in that Western Civ course, was a collection of primary sources of writings from the time. We plunged into Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, whom I had never heard of before, much less read, and trying to understand what they were driving at and how it related to the social and political order of 17th century England, or indeed how it related to anything, presented a greater intellectual challenge to me than I had ever encountered before. And when I finally got it, or thought I did, my feeling of elation and triumph was so gratifying that I was sure I'd found my calling, or at least my college major. During the remaining 3 years of college, I took every history course that was offered, which in this small college was not all that many courses. And only a few of them were actually in American history. There was only one professor that taught American history. But one of the English professors in this Swedish college, his name was Gerhard Alexis, and he was the best teacher I had in school, taught several courses in American studies. And that made up for the absence, or the relative absence, of courses in American history. And along with the professor who taught the Western Civ course, I took several other European history courses from him. They persuaded me that I should apply to graduate school, which I did. I'd already made up my mind to concentrate on American history, and a sort of self-constructed senior thesis didn't have an honors program there, and there was no such thing as a senior thesis, but I constructed one of my own in local history that given me a taste for doing research in primary sources. But I still didn't have a clear idea of what aspect of American history I wanted to focus on. At that stage, it was not the Civil War. My college had no Civil War and Reconstruction course, and my only real contact with the Civil War was a couple of books I'd read by Bruce Catton. But I had developed, this is in the middle and late 1950s, I had developed a kind of horrified fascination with the American South, about which I knew nothing firsthand and had never visited, sort of like Lynn not having ever been to Europe becomes interested in European history. My college years were also the years of the murder of Emmett Till in Mississippi, the Montgomery bus boycott and the emergence of Martin Luther King, the showdown over the admission of 9 black students to Central High School in Little Rock. And these headline events generated a complicated reaction in my mind of repulsion toward the South, but also a desire to know what it was in Southern history that had produced these events, what made that region tick. The region seemed both alien and exotic to me. So I chose to do my graduate study at Johns Hopkins with C. Van Woodward, the foremost historian of the South. My first appointment with Woodward in September of 1958, just before classes began at Hopkins, produced another eye-opening experience that helped to shape my desire, my career, and my understanding of what a historian's role in society could be. My appointment had to be postponed for a day because Van had been called to Washington to testify before a congressional committee about potential problems in Little Rock as they began the second year of desegregation, with federal troops and a federalized National Guards standing by to protect these black students. Now here was a revelation to me, an academic historian offering counsel on the most important domestic issue of the time. Although I don't think I realized it then, this event planted a seed in my mind that eventually matured into a conviction, which I share with Eric and others, that even of those of us as historians who dwell in the halls of academia can and should use our knowledge to serve broader public interests, which Van, of course, was doing in this congressional testimony. Most of the students we teach in our classrooms are not going to become professional historians, but we tell them and ourselves that their knowledge of history will help them understand the world in which they live and maybe even help become a better world. And the same is true of the public lectures we give, the museums that we serve as advisors for, the books we write, and so on. At least for some of us, we hope to be listened to or read beyond the small circle of our fellow specialists.